Hello and welcome back to A Better World. This is your host, Mitchell J. Rabin, and we're very glad you're joining us again today. Today we're going to have another very interesting show. We have with us Thornton Streeter, who is here from India, originally British born, who has been doing some extraordinary work worldwide in the domain of energy medicine and photographing in some way the biofields. He is the founder of the Center for Biofield Sciences in India, and he's been doing this kind of work for over 10 years now in mapping essentially the energy fields of human beings, and actually not even just human beings. But the work that he's been doing is really breakthrough when it comes to understanding what is going on with human beings, what is the flow of energy, what does that flow represent in terms of health and healing and wellness, and even spiritual development. So these are going to be some of the subjects of our show today, which is this interface of technology, consciousness, and healing. So thanks for being on the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So Thornton, what is it that got you going with this? What was the purpose that you had in mind when you first decided to go to India and open up the center?
Well, I did have a round the world ticket. I did a TV show called Thorny and Co. And the last scene is me getting on a plane and leaving for India.
From London?
Yeah, it was like a year in the life of a yuppie. Because I was a futures dealer, minding my own business, only interested in myself and self-gratification. And money. Oh, dreadful business. But, I'd been brought up differently. So there was a lot of conflict in my life, and I was given the option to sort of get a fresh look at the world.
So when you say differently than the life that you came to embrace.
Yeah. My mom is the most wonderful kind of spirit being, very angelic in nature, and looks after the world that she revolves in. Mm. She goes around feeding the street people in London, all kinds of mad stuff.
Wow.
But I went to India.
So it sounds like maybe you came full circle.
Totally.
Wow.
I went to India,
So you had a reaction to that kind of life.
Yeah.
Went into the futures, sure. Narcissistic, materialistic, and then emerged again.
Yeah. And I remember saying, I want to cut a deal with God. I want to work with
like
spirit.
A true futures dealer.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Absolutely.
Let's cut a deal, God. And I'm the highest. Right?
Yeah. So, but it was strange because I did have a fabulous traveling experience, and I went all the way around the world, and then I got to my uncle's apartment building. He's a professor in San Diego at UCSD, and my sister answered the door. And she said, "Oh, hang on a minute." And she ran inside and got me this necklace, which my grandmother wanted me to have, who passed away while I was away. So she put this thing on my head very deliberately, and then she said, "I'm going for a swim." So I just turned around and followed her, watched her dive into the pool, and I dived in, but it was only 3 feet of water. So I split my head open from here to here.
Oh my.
Yeah, well, it was kind of an enlightening experience, I can tell you. I broke my spine fractured my spine in 5 places. But after that, I could see more stuff than I could see before. It was kind of like a accidental trepanning process.
Yes.
Consequently, when I was back in London, I could feel...
All of that healed?
Yeah.
Through what means?
I got better, but I wasn't totally better. And I was in London, and I looked up because I'd seen this chief priest leaving his body in a ceremony in South India. And this lady called Rosemary Steele had been taking Kirlian photographs of his hands. And for the 5 days he was supposed to leave the body, there was no handprints. Whereas for 2 weeks before, he had these beautiful coronas around every fingertip. So it was a sort of convergence of me wanting to follow up on something I'd seen in India.
Yes.
And then also not feeling brilliant myself. I had a sense of leaking. and I looked up, there was no internet then, I looked up Kirlian photography in the library, and I got a number. I spoke to a lady who turned out to be Dr. Harry Oldfield's wife, and I said, I'm really interested in Kirlian photography. And she said, oh, we don't do that anymore. So I said, okay. About a week later, I called back and said, so what do you do? And that's what started this whole journey for me into energies. Apart from that initial experience at this yagna ceremony in South India. So I went to visit them, and within a few minutes I was one of the first people to stand in front of this real-time, live biofield imaging camera that Oldfield was developing. Richard Gerber had put him up to it.
Oh.
He'd been round there and said, Harry, you're the leader in the world in developing Kirlian. You've already made a 3D Kirlian system. Why don't you use computers and take it to another level?
Richard Gerber, who is the author of Vibrational Medicine.
Who recently passed away, yeah.
Oh, did he really?
Yeah, yeah. Consequently, I was just fascinated.
Who's written about radionics and all sorts of...
And Harry Oldfield.
Yes, sure.
So, page 106. So I had this plume of energy leaking out of the top of my head, a bit like a palm tree.
My.
And he sealed it up with his treatment modality, which is pulsing frequencies through gemstones. And I was just heaps better. So I went from not knowing what I was going to do for the rest of my life to knowing exactly what I was going to be doing for the rest of my life, because this was the future for me. Consequently, I went back to India and joined up with the university.
So first, though, you, after the accident...
Yeah. Sorry, I missed a bit. You know the chain my sister gave me?
Sure.
That fell down.
From grandmother.
That fell down on my chin and snapped as I had this accident. So
as you dove.
So instead of breaking my back and breaking my neck, I just had fractures and walked out of hospital 2 days later. Considering how mashed my head was, which...
So that protected you.
Yeah.
What you're saying is, because it broke that.
Yeah. And it was a cross, so don't get me wrong, but it was kind of
magical.
Yeah, I loved it.
Yeah.
I loved the whole thing. I loved the whole experience.
That, in a sense, set you up for what your future would be.
Yeah, I think
outside of futures.
I think so. Yeah.
And then Harry Oldfield's technology, is that the PIP technology?
Yeah, the PIP, which
so that's what analyzed the leak and noted the leak.
Yeah, and you could see the chakras and all the meridians and these layers of energy around me, and I was like, this is hot. And he showed me a video of a lady holding a crystal, and you could see this little entity coming out. And also another clip of a guy who was like a Rinpoche, and he had all these little golden entities flying around his head. And when they realized that they were being filmed, they all dived into his head. And he went, whoo! I mean, it's priceless. And so we'll see on the PowerPoint slides, towards the end of the show, there's an entity there who is in a mortuary and is a soul guide. And another one who we captured in a haunted house with a new device, and you can actually see her fingernails, her...
Yes.
You know, it's pretty impressive stuff.
Surely.
And, you know, Harry is a dedicated scientist outside of the normal scientific arena. Yeah. So he just can develop what he wants, and he's brilliant. And so one of my main
when he's not held down and pinned down to corporate funding and... doing what is being required of a scientist within certain strict limits.
But
they can really be so incredibly artistic and creative.
He's been really honoured, though, recently. In England, his microscope has really won praise, because now we can see the energy field around a cell. So it adds a whole new dimension to live blood microscopy.
Wow.
Yeah, but anyway, I decided to set up my own research institute.
So after the head, after Oldfield, seeing it, and then and were you able to empirically tell the difference between your energy field when you got
Sure.
a leak
Oh,
handled?
totally.
Yeah.
And I've got so many before and after, during. I've tested 160 modalities. After I went back to India the
Yes.
second time, I studied at university. And I studied at an esoteric facility called the Zoroastrian College. And it's one of these distant learning places, but I actually stayed there. So it's quite a small campus, but fabulous things going on. And this doctor...
Where in India?
Well, we use Bombay as a centre, but the college building is a couple of hours on a train north of there in a place called Sunjan, which is where the Zoroastrians first landed when they fled Persia after the sort of...
cleansing?
Well, no, it wasn't that. It was just, it was a change of the guard, wasn't it? I mean, that's all religions are. From my side, this was a new place where I could learn everything I needed to learn about the chakras, the aura, the field, the layers of the field. And Mayor Master Moose in the 70s and 80s was pioneering Kirlian and all these other things as well. So I really felt at home, having spent a few months with Oldfield.
Yeah.
But she inspired me to set up an institute.
And her name is what?
Dr. Moose, M-O-O-S, Dr. Mayor Master Moose. If the Pope has a conference of all the different religions, interfaith peace, he will invite her as a Zoroastrian representative. And I've been to, weird places, to gatherings as her baggage handler. Literally, Chela, devotee of this amazing woman, and the things that she was into. I mean, so I consider myself someone who was initiated first into spiritual traditions and then became a scientist. And
Out of that.
Yeah, because I've spent 10 years now in a lab. And it's only in the last year that people have started inviting me around to share my stuff. And I thought, well, I've got one of the cogs of the clock and, I can contribute to the thing. And more I realized, what we're doing really is the cutting edge, or what I call the bleeding edge, the other side of the knife.
Yes.
So
after getting trained at the college and then starting your own center, you've been testing, as you say, you've been in the lab for the past many years, studying and testing different technologies.
Sure, yeah.
Give us some examples. I know you're about to test the ICAP release meter for one, so that's going to be on your block.
And that laser Q10, I'm interested
And the laser,
in that.
yes, exactly. What else have you been
Put it this way,
with?
we focus, Centre for Biofield Sciences obviously implies that we're interested in biofield devices.
Naturally.
You'll see that slide of the orange. Photo of an orange, Kirlian photo of an orange. What I'm interested in is not just looking at machines, the GDV, the PIP, the RFI, the ESM, all these.
All these acronyms, right.
But the point is what we learn from that.
Yes.
And what I've synthesized is that basically we eat light. Okay? And the difference between a human being and a human doing is that human beings get enough light, raw food, charged water.
The chi, or the prana of the food.
To rise
energy field of the food.
Yeah, to rise above the mundane of the sort of wakeful sleepiness that people who have very little time and are a slave to someone else's agenda.
Yes.
My agenda is to share with people a kind of first aid kit of understanding, if you like, the priorities. So, for example, I always start every lecture, even if it's with 800 medical doctors or 500...
I know what.
Yeah.
Water?
Yeah. I say, well, hang on.
I've been to a few of your lectures.
Okay, so hear this out. What percentage of the human body is water?
Well, about 80%. I think
Okay.
I answered that in the Bahamas just now.
So what is the best medicine 80% of the time?
Water.
Thank you. And what is water?
It's a mysterious liquid which changes into many different forms, actually.
Right.
It's not so well known. I've interviewed Dr. Botman Gelage, with whom I became very friendly,
Right.
and I learned about some of the real mystique of water.
Yeah.
It's just not as fluid a subject as
Well, if you haven't come across Emoto,
Right, exactly. We've also had Dr. Moto here as well.
Yeah, he's shed some light on it.
Definitely.
So
And then Dean Radin took all of Dr. Emoto's work of the Institute for Noetic Sciences.
Right.
I know you know Dean.
Sure.
And restudied and did another double blind on all of Dr. Emoto's work and took it further. And now there is actual, real clinical proof of the efficacy of Dr. Emoto's work.
Oh, well, that's
not
good
from
to hear.
Dr. Emoto himself, quite honestly, but from Dr. Radin's work.
Oh, well, that's good to hear. I didn't know that. And I don't know him.
It was done in some secret, but
Okay.
now public.
Well, I'm glad to hear that.
So anyway, please go on.
So
Water.
So yeah,
is
but
the first healing.
yeah, and raw food
mechanism.
Of course, people can eat whatever they like, but they need to balance it with fresh raw food, because the tree absorbs the sunlight, puts it into balls of light, which we call fruit. We eat that ball of light. The liquid and the solid pass straight through us, but the life force, our protective sheath, which protects us from any harmful vibrations, whether they be bacterial, parasites, or whatever, this fiery field is fueled by that biophotonic light from charged water
Right.
and raw food. So if I go into, a restaurant and eat a cooked meal, there's nothing wrong with that, but I need to also munch on some carrots and some radish and some lettuce.
Balance, moderation.
Yeah, and from my side, I've come at it scientifically. I've said this is what someone's field looks like who is on a raw, fresh, vibrant diet.
Yes.
And this is someone's field who isn't. And I've even got that picture of the two rats where you can see one rat who's eaten Kellogg's cornflakes and the other rat who's eaten muesli. And the little rat who's eaten cornflakes is this, mangy little creature who looks like he's on death's door.
Yeah.
But of course that's an experiment that we do not on rats but on our own children.
Surely.
And I find this really... So I found my voice, to share this important information with who I consider those that need to hear it and want to hear it, because...
But what about the sunlight directly also? In fact, in India, as you so well know, is the very famous sun-gazing tradition.
Sure, yeah.
And a breatharian tradition as well.
Sure.
So how do these interface with your recognition of the role of light in our nutrition?
Well, I think it's
or
very
as
important.
Gabriel Cousins calls it, spiritual nutrition.
Yeah.
He's actually identified the light source in a way and has measured it piezoelectrically.
Sure.
It's really interesting.
Well, in India, what we like to do is we like to watch the sunrise and the sunset. So it's a different kind of light from laying on a beach for 4 hours and sunbathing, where there are other complications. And I think there's a sacred space around people. And anything that comes in and out of that space needs to be natural, especially when their health is compromised. So batteries in watches, lipstick, rubber-soled shoes, unnatural fibers, all these things have an effect on us and we don't quite realize it. I've done a lot of research into mobile phone radiation, and I've tested a lot of so-called devices for balancing and harmonizing mobile...
I want to bring something up that's very controversial here, which is the studies that were done on Zen monks in Hiroshima. And while I know what you're talking about and appreciate it, on one hand, on the other, the role of mind, Thornton, is so powerful, and the clarity of mind so great, that when these monks were tested, as all the other people, the lay people in the villages of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, it was found that they actually did not have radiation levels showing up in their bodies at all.
Sure.
So what we really see is that people create immunity
Sure.
and a strong, healthy body a lot through mind.
Oh, well, I agree about that. Well, then I'll take your point a stage further.
All right.
I'm very aware of this. Put it this way. Every single religious building has some kind of a spire. And that spire is for downloading cosmic frequencies. So if I go into a temple, take my shoes off, put my knees on the floor and hold my hands together, I'm creating a kind of circuitry which I call a spiritual laundromat, where you're actually every week going in and cleansing yourself and just grounding all your stresses out. I mean, the sweetest guy in the world still gets road rage. You know, the stress of being in the modern soup of life.
The cultural listening, the background listening, as Werner Erhard called it.
So I accept the power of mind, and obviously with all our array of devices, we've created an opportunity, if you like, to then examine things. Because with the GDV, with the PIP, I can look at someone and someone whose health is compromised, and I can say, okay, this guy's got a blocked throat chakra. He also has arthritis. It seems to me that when we get someone in to treat that person for arthritis, they need to be treating the throat chakra. And sure enough, they treat the throat chakra and the arthritis goes away. Now,
so you get some form of sequencing and etiology.
Even irritable bowel syndrome, because we're linking, this is communication. So if this is blocked, okay, this is someone who's getting frustrated. Frustration is a precursor to arthritis. In the same way, irritable bowel syndrome or any digestive problem is often linked to relationships, because this center, and there's two pictures in my slides, the gentleman before and after, and you can see the blocked throat chakra, and you can see the out of focus image with this lady very clearly seeing her chakras, and lots of congestion on the left side. And that links into relationship problems with her mother. So what I'm interested in now, having created a very scientific environment where we can do double-blind clinical research, where we can actually start moving away from disease concepts right up into the very roots of how these different branches of irregularity form. And I find that fascinating. Beautiful. And it's all linked in with this ancient Ayurvedic notion, yogic notion, the science of life. You know, there is no medicine. Doctors to me are drug dealers. You know, and I'm not ashamed to say it. You know, I come from a feisty environment where, you know, we really do want to blast the cobwebs and make changes.
Absolutely, it's beautiful.
And fortunately, we're well funded. Our agenda is spiritually motivated. We want everyone to have a fair chance of good health. Obviously, people make their own choices.
Surely.
I'm not going to impose anything on anyone at any point.
I want to ask something of you, because you're uniquely qualified to comment on this. But prior to that, I just want to say, when you were talking about relationships showing up in digestive disorders, something I've discussed with you to some extent and presented also at the conferences we've been at, this idea of total biology has the idea that the stomach is largely related to miscommunication or not being understood, especially in the family clan. So here you're talking about relationships, especially
when you
with
say
mother.
Stomach, do you mean what we know to be intestines? Because you say my tummy, don't you? Or do you mean the stomach
itself?
All right, the stomach, okay.
And yes, it also relates to all different aspects of the digestive tract, which has to do with different levels of suppression or repression of information that has not been expressed. And the further you go down the tract, the more chronic and old, ancient the problem is, and as you get to the anus, forget it. You know, it's this. But you can unravel all of that. But it's interesting, because basically what you're saying, Thornton, is that, or what you're realizing is that there's always an emotional component, a psycho-emotional component to all of these so-called physical diseases, which is just an expression. And you said it in one of your talks, that the body is, in a sense, the expression of, is the vehicle of expression for an illness. So we're very aligned on that.
Yeah. Well, I see us as I see us as a bag of senses. You know, this is a spacesuit for Earth. Legs to walk.
That's
hands,
a very Indian point of view.
You know, hands to grab things, put them in our mouths, see where we're going, hear what's going on. But in spite of that, it is just a vehicle. And as I said, through my initiation in India, and especially within the Zoroastrian community, and the opportunity to learn about the soul, and the geography of the cosmos, and I'm really comfortable with that. I'm really comfortable with the concept of karma, but at the same time, I now understand that we create our chakras.
Right.
We create a satellite dish to bring in a balancing frequency. So if our thoughts and our bodies are so disturbed, we don't make nice chakras.
Exactly.
So we then don't get nice cosmic frequencies
The proper
back.
download.
So it becomes a karmic cycle where we can no longer self-regulate.
Exactly.
And I'm interested.
This is true. Then it appears that we're victim of our circumstances because we're not creating the vibrancy that would attract the higher levels of intelligence that we could and in a sense should be operating on that level.
Well, I see the human biofield and biophotonic information as being the true healing interface. And the physical body, it's like blasting through a wall when you could go through the door.
Yeah, right.
Yeah?
Like, why bother?
Yeah, I mean, it's such a mess, so much dust.
But from that point of view, Thornton, I know you've looked at the GDV. Of course, I know Dr. Krokov and a lot of the others that you have dealt with. I'm particularly interested in knowing what you have to say about the life system and what you have seen about its effects on people's lives.
I've done a pilot study into the life, and I'm now engaging in a serious study in the life system. I'm pretty fascinated by it. I'm one of those scientists who now know that it works, but still doesn't know how it works. You know, I understand the random event generator. I understand the, the core and the skier. The whole load of different devices in the same family have certain steps to them. But the proof of the pudding's in the eating. And I've spoken to so many practitioners in the field working with these kinds of devices who have such incredible, profound results. I'm stunned. I'm stunned. But awesome. I have to know how it works.
Absolutely.
I'm not going to promote something unless I got the A to B. In fact, I don't believe as practitioners we have a right to take someone to the healing B if we don't know where their A is. Yeah. And I think the life system helps me find out their A because it can find those little needles in the haystack which you can't find out any other way.
Exactly. Well, talking about needles in the haystack, we're going to have to look for more together because this is just the beginning.
Thank you very much for having me on your show.
Absolutely, Thornton. It's really been a pleasure. Keep up the great work you're doing, man, because it's really a contribution to the world.
Anytime.
Beautiful.
Cheers.
This is Mitchell J. Rabin for A Better World. Thanks so much for joining us. I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. And I look forward to seeing you all next week.